Hello, my name is Andrew Kegley, and I've decided to do my creative project on the rice production in Japan. The main reason why I decided to choose this topic for my presentation is because I've always been very interested in Japanese culture and traditions. It's, so I found an opportunity with this project to do more research about the country, especially the agricultural sector, in which I found something interesting about the rice production that I decided to make them as my main topic for my presentation. I hope you guys enjoy. Here's an outline of my presentation. I'm first going to start off by talking about Japan's agricultural industry history. Then I'm going to discuss the current situation that's going on in the agricultural sector in Japan today. And for the last part and my creative part of my project, I'm going to show you guys how to make salmon fried rice. When you hear about Japanese food, one thing that you might associate it with is rice. It is a fact that rice has been an essential part of the Japanese diet for a very long time. Rice farming was first introduced into Japan around 400 BC. A type of farming that occurs in Japan is called wet rice farming, in which the rice is grown under shallow bodies of water, and workers walk around these bodies of water and pick the rice out of the ground. An interesting fact is that rice farming was the first type of agricultural farming that happened in Japan, and it evolved into the big agricultural industry that it has today. Today, Japan's agricultural industry is second to the size of the US's agricultural industry. Japan doesn't just grow rice though, they also grow soybeans, barley, wheat, and other vegetables and fruits. They also have a very large poultry and livestock sector in their country. Throughout history, Japan has experienced major disasters in their country, some environmental and some human. One of the major disasters that they had to face was World War II, and rice was one of the essential things that everyone ate throughout the war. The main reason why is because rice is really easy to store and it doesn't spoil real quick. So during World War II, especially after the nuclear bombs going off in Japan, rice was one of the essential foods that was being consumed by the Japanese people. You've probably heard and know about the past few years disasters that occurred in Japan. Um, One of the human-made disasters was the nuclear power plant melting down and contaminating that whole area of Japan, which made a whole bunch of farming land and soil radioactive. Another natural disaster that kind of damaged the agricultural industry in Japan was the tsunami that occurred a few years ago. It damaged some of the rice fields and other agriculture farms in Japan. The two areas of Japan where most of our agricultural farming occurs is in Niigata and Sendai. You can see it in the slide by the color-coded chart where each specific type of agricultural product is grown. As mentioned earlier, Japan's agricultural industry is doing good and is very strong today. They do a good job growing agricultural commodity products such as soybeans and wheat and other fruits and vegetables. That's why I found it surprising that the rice production has been decreasing in the past few years. The reason why I found this interesting is because after learning that rice has been an essential part of the Japanese diet, I was wondering why rice has been decreasing. Rice production has been decreasing. This is the reason why I decided to do more my research and my presentation on the reason why the rice production in Japan is decreasing in the past few years. Throughout my research, I found some factors, socio-economical and governmental factors, that have caused rice production to decrease in the past few years. One socioeconomic factor that I found is that diets between the youth in Japan have been changing throughout the past few years. One of the reasons why is because they have accessibility to foreign food products from other countries because of internationalization. So they're eating less rice and Japanese food products because they have more of a choice. Main reason why the Japanese rice production has been decreasing in the past few years that I found is that the Japan's government issued a policy called Genten in 1971 that actually has the government paying rice farmers not to produce rice. This obviously is one of the main reasons why rice production has experienced a sharp decline since 1971. Uh, the government is currently planning on eradicating this policy. By 2018, it should be all gone, and rice farmers are going to be able to produce as much rice as they want. Another factor that is causing rice production to decrease is because most of the rice farmers are starting to get old, and the youth of America and the youth in Japan aren't interested in farming. So a lot of farms don't have people that are gonna take over once the older farmers go away. But one positive fact that's keeping the rice production strong in Japan is that the majority of citizens in Japan prefer domestically grown rice to imported rice. The WTO requires Japan to import a certain amount of rice, but a majority of that rice is used for food reserves just in case for natural disasters like the tsunami that happened a few years ago. In this slide, you can see 4 different pictures of rice farms in Japan. The type of rice farming that's occurring in these pictures is called wet rice farming, and this has been occurring in Japan since around 400 BC. As previously mentioned in the slides before, Japan is required to import a certain amount of rice from other countries under WTO requirements. The majority of this rice is put into food reserves for natural disasters like the tsunami that happened a few years ago. The reason why this imported rice is put into food reserves is because the majority of Japanese citizens prefer domestically grown rice in Japan. An interesting fact about Japan is that because of its size, they do a great job getting the fresh produce from the farms to farmers markets to the consumers' tables. This means that the majority of agricultural products that are grown and consumed domestically in Japan are always fresh when the consumer gets them. Japan has very good farmers markets, and as you can see in the picture below is a picture of a farmers market that has a whole bunch of different type of fresh agricultural commodities. In this slide, I'm going to briefly discuss some of the politics that are involved in Japan's agricultural industry today. With regards to international trade policy, one major thing that Japan has done in the past few years is that they entered into the negotiations for a trade agreement called Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP. Japan has a very interesting trade policy in their country. One interesting thing about it is that they do not like imports, so the government likes to issue trade barriers such as tariffs and tariff rate quotas. A tariff rate quota is not a quota, it's similar to a quota, but the difference is that with a tariff rate quota, once a certain quota is met, a higher tariff is applied to those imports, which means that unlike a quota, If the country needs to import over the quota, the tariff rate quota will allow them to import over the quota. Another interesting fact about Japan's trade policy is that they have a small number of exports. Because Japan doesn't like imports, most of the imports that they rely on from other countries are usually feed for cattle and other livestock, and food products for citizens. But most food products in Japan are usually domestically created and sold in Japan. Japan has created many agencies and policies to ensure the safety of the food supply for their citizens. One of these agencies that they created is called the Consumer Safety Agency. These agencies and policies are created by the Japanese government in response to major disasters that occur in the country. One human-made disaster was the nuclear power plant in Fukushima melting down and polluting that whole area with radioactivity. One of the jobs of the Consumer Safety Agency is to test the soil near Fukushima to make sure that none of the farms or any agricultural commodities are radioactively polluted because of the disaster. So for my creative part of my project, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to make salmon fried rice. First thing you're going to need to do is get your ingredients. You're going to need 1 fillet of salmon, 1 to 2 eggs, I decided to use 2 eggs, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 2 cups of rice, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 teaspoon of white pepper, and black pepper. Step 1, you're going to first need to cook the salmon. So there are many ways to cook salmon. This is the way I decided to cook my salmon. I heated the oven up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, waited till it got preheated. I placed the fillet on a baking sheet, and I covered the baking sheet with tin foil. I washed the salmon and I lightly seasoned it with sea salt, but you guys can just use regular salt, whatever you prefer. And then you bake it for 15 to 20 minutes, depends how thick the salmon fillet is. Step 2, you're going to need to cook the rice. You can cook the rice any way that you prefer. You can steam it, you can boil it, you can microwave it, or you can even just order white rice from a Chinese restaurant. It's your choice. You can always use leftover white rice from if you ordered takeout one night too. So step 3, you're going to need to prepare your green onions and your eggs. Go ahead and chop up your green onions and go ahead and crack your eggs into a bowl or a coffee cup. I use a coffee cup because that's what was clean in my house. And go ahead and mix your eggs up and have them ready to be scrambled. Alright, step 4, go ahead and scramble your eggs. And at this point you should have your salmon all cooked, and go ahead and tear your salmon into little pieces so when you're ready to put it into the rice, it's all ready for you to put in the rice. Okay, step 5, you're going to want to add a little bit of olive oil to whatever pan you're using to cook your fried rice on. And then you're going to want to add your green onions and a little of your sesame oil to the pan. Go ahead and let that simmer for about a minute or 2 before you put the rice in. So step 6, add your rice, your shredded salmon, and your eggs into the pan with the green onions and sesame oil. And go ahead and start stirring up the rice. So step 7, you're going to need to add your soy sauce, your salt, your white pepper, and your black pepper. This step is mainly just to add flavor to your fried rice. So you can put as much as you prefer into your rice. And once you have put the amount that you would like into your rice. Go ahead and just stir it up for 1 to 5 minutes and it should be ready to eat. So step 8 is the best step. You just enjoy the salmon fried rice that you cooked. If you want to learn more about the facts that I've mentioned in this presentation, here is my works cited with all my sources that I used. I hope that you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope that you have a good day. Thank you.